This morning, that main story on the news, the 1984 murder of Mary Travers was a tragic mistake, according to the woman who helped to murder her. Mary McArdle is a special advisor to the Sinn Féin Minister Carol Nicoline. Mary McArdle has broken her silence by speaking to the Andersonstown News. She said, "I want to state clearly that the killing of Mary Travers was a tragic mistake. I regret that it happened." Let me say hello to Ann Travers, who is the sister of the late Mary Travers and daughter of the former magistrate Tom Travers. Ann, good morning.
Good morning, Frank.
Ann, on a morning like this morning, when we look at the front of the Andersonstown News and we see a picture of Mary McArdle, we see that banner headline, "Travers killing, a tragic mistake," and the word regret is used. To you, as a suffering family member, is regret enough?
Well, as I did ask last week, I did ask where Mary McArdle was and why hadn't she come out. And she's now chosen to come out and speak to the Andersonstown News. To describe my sister's murder as a mistake. Well, I put 2 treats in my daughter's lunchbox for her school trip yesterday. She was only allowed 1. That was a tragic mistake to my daughter because she got told off by the teacher. Regret, I regretted that I put the extra treat into her lunchbox. Mistake. My sister was murdered. There were 2 gunmen went out that day. I have listened and I've read a lot over the last week and a lot of comments and a lot of, other people's opinions, and I've taken it all on board. But there were 2 gunmen went out that day with 2 guns. One of them shot my sister in the back, and the other one held a gun up to my mum's head to murder her, but the bullets stayed in the barrel, while another gunman stood over my dad. Now, the IRA knew that my dad was unarmed. They knew he didn't have a police bodyguard. They knew that he was a soft target. So surely if they didn't want to make such a tragic mistake, they would only have sent 1 gunman. I just find that actually quite insulting. But Mary McArdle is quite right. There is nothing that she can say that will ever be able to deal with the grief that we feel. And Frank, until Wednesday of last week, I could speak about my sister's murder and the attempted murder of my father without breaking down. I could tell my friends who I met about it and speak to them in a calm and rational and a factual way. And this last week, I seen Mary McArdle in that post has brought up emotions which I thought I didn't know still existed. And, she talks also in that article about a state war machine. Let me tell people who my father was, Tom Travers. He wasn't any part of a state war machine. He was a resident magistrate. Most of his cases were shoplifting, car crime, public order offences, paying fines. Yes, he remanded prisoners. And, that was all part of his job. But my dad grew up in a little town, a beautiful town of Strangford, or village of Strangford in County Down, in a 2 up, 2 down. His father was a labourer and his mother was a cook. My dad didn't come from money. He worked hard. He left school at 14 and he worked hard. And he did his law exams by night class. And when he became a solicitor, he then, with his family, when he had the chance to become a magistrate where he could spend more time with his family, he took it because he was a family man. And he was a fair and he was a just man. And anybody who knew my dad knew that he was a fair and just man. But I have to make a comment that Mary McArdle is also quoted in that piece as saying that she knew it was going to cause upset, but she was pleased to take the post. Now, she knew it was going to cause upset. Why did she take it? Last Thursday, at the Sinn Féin conference, the Minister for Culture, Carol Nicoline, threw out to the journalists that you either accept the Good Friday Agreement or you don't. I've pointed out a couple of times because I've read the Good Friday Agreement to see in what part of it I wasn't accepting it, because I have accepted it. I accepted that Mary McArdle was released under the Good Friday Agreement. I can't see where I haven't accepted. All I can see is in the Code of Conduct where it says, and I don't actually have it with me because I'm on a school run now, but where it says that they have to ministers have to ensure good community relations and equality of all. Well, I don't feel that this is ensuring good community relations. Neither do I feel that I'm being treated as an equal. Mary McArdle has said in that piece she knew it was going to cause upset, but she was pleased to take it. But you know what? Respect me as a victim and don't cause that upset and just stand down from the post.
You mentioned being a victim, and of course Sinn Féin clearly speak about victimhood as well. Would your message again this morning be to Sinn Féin to withdraw Mary McArdle to help the healing process for you as a victim of the Troubles?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. And also, I would also call that it's looked at and how special advisors are appointed. I think it should be an open process, and I think the job should be advertised. Our community, we need to see transparency. We need to know that there's integrity on both sides. And, Mary McArdle freely admits in that piece that she met Carolyn Quillen while in prison and they became friends. And she also does go on to say that she's done a lot of work for Sinn Féin over the last 14 years and that she feels that she's contributed to, their own peace strategy, their own peace process. Well, I'm sure that she has, and I don't want to take away from her any of the good work that she may have done while coming out from prison for Sinn Féin. But that doesn't give her a get-out-of-jail-free card with this. There is a moral implication here. I just feel that I am not being respected, my family aren't being respected as victims, that Mary's murder was a mistake, but they can justify the attempted murder on my dad.
There were many murders during the course of the Troubles, and your sister's murder was particularly horrific because of where it happened and how it happened.
Yeah, she was walking home from Mass with my mum and dad. She was on her way over to Antonstown. She taught primary 3 class little boys in Holy Child, whom she loved. Some of those boys who are now young men and married to families of their own still keep in contact with my mum. That's how much of an impact Mary had in their lives that short while that she was teaching them. She was chatting with Dad about the different hymns that she was going to be playing over in the church because they were going to be doing their first confessions in preparation for the First Holy Communion. But one of the last things that the conversation that was held between Mum, Dad and Mary was my mum turned to my dad and said, "Doesn't Mary look lovely?" And Mary lifted her collar of her blouse and said, "Do you like it, Mum?" And next thing, she was dead. This is an innocent young woman, and describe her murder as a mistake. She was an innocent young woman. And I appreciate that lots of people were dragged into things during the Troubles. But, I could respect that more if Mary McArdle kind of really repented and really said, "Look, I'm really sorry for all the stuff I was involved in for the Troubles." It's no point in trying to justify it all now.
Do you have any understanding of where Mary McArdle may have been coming from as a 19-year-old female from Turf Lodge, while your daughter was also a young Catholic, 22 years of age, your sister? And she now says that since my release from prison, I have been active in Sinn Féin and have played, I hope, a constructive and positive role in winning and maintaining support for the peace process within the nationalist and Republican community, not least among the community where I live and which has suffered enormously from the past conflict. Do you buy into any of that statement from Mary McArdle?
I do absolutely understand that there was dreadful pressure put on young people from different areas of Belfast and both sides, both the Loyalist and the the provisional IRA and the INLA and that, the Republican side. I think that actually is what marks the difference really between Mary McArdle and Sinn Féin and perhaps myself, is that I can understand other people's human pain, and I would never go out on purpose to exacerbate someone else's pain and suffering. And that is what they have done. I am glad that she has done good work, that she's doing good work within her community and she can put a lot more back into it. I'm pleased that she can. But it doesn't take away from the pain and the suffering which is still being caused to myself and my family. And, I actually just think it's quite arrogant of them, like to say, I knew it was going to cause upset, but, I was asked to do it and I was pleased to take it up and I'm looking forward to the role.
I'm looking at texts and emails that are coming in here as we're speaking, and the amount of sympathy for you, Anne. I could spend the next 20 minutes simply reading out comments that are supporting you, but there's one comment that just caught my eye, and it's a reference from someone who has been looking at the photograph on the front of the Andersonstown News this morning, and maybe Mary McArdle is disadvantaged to some extent by her persona, but there's a reference here to Mary McArdle looking like a woman who isn't sorry for what she did. And I can see what the person means within the photograph, but sometimes the camera lies. They say the camera never lies, but she looks like a woman who isn't sympathetic. That certainly is an accurate description within that photograph.
I can't.
And have you seen the photograph?
No, Frank, I can't really comment. Well, I think I know the photograph you're talking about. She's standing in front of a mural. Is that?
No, this is a new photograph that the Andersonstown
okay.
News have. She's sitting at her desk. She has her notes in front of her, and she has just a very bland look as she stares straight into the camera. As I say, we can't read very much into that, but it has been commented on. Now, if she was prepared to express regret, she's obviously not prepared to say sorry, but if she was prepared to accept regret more publicly than simply in the local Andersonstown News, would you think it was an advantage? And the reason I ask that is she's not prepared to come on this programme or our UTV programmes.
I think it's very easy for people to speak words and to say that you're sorry and to, but actions sometimes speak louder than words. And the action that would show me that Mary McArdle was genuinely sorry for all of the hurt and for my sister's murder and being involved with her murder would be that she would turn round to her colleagues and say, do you know what, guys, this is too much too soon. It's obviously causing the Travers family a great deal of pain. Perhaps I need to back off from it for a little while and do something else still in the background. Maybe this just isn't the right time.
When would be the right time for you, Anne, to speak to Sinn Féin?
I've been asked a lot over would I meet Sinn Féin and without. I think whenever Sinn Féin start to recognise, all of the victims, all of the people who were murdered in the Troubles, all of them as equals, not some more equal than others, not some to call for tribunals into their murders and for others to sort of say, oh, well, that was all part of the state war machine and therefore we just have to get on with it. All of the men and women and the boys and the girls and everybody who was murdered within Northern Ireland was somebody's child, somebody's husband, somebody's wife, somebody's daughter, somebody's brother, and it has caused such immeasurable hurt to everybody. And I have had people speak to me in this last week who have thanked me for speaking out because they've been too scared to speak themselves. They've been too scared that they're going to feel like they're going to be shouted down, by Sinn Féin because maybe their loved one was maybe in the police or was maybe in the UDR or was perhaps in the judiciary. People who Sinn Féin think were fair game, because they were at, and in inverted commas, a war. My dad and my sister were not in a war. My dad had no way to defend himself. My dad didn't carry a gun. My dad didn't have a police bodyguard because he didn't want another family to suffer the type of grief, and he couldn't live with the guilt if someone was killed because of him. And he ended up losing his own daughter because he treated everybody as an individual. And he had the feeling and emotion to consider other people's feelings. And Sinn Féin aren't considering my feelings or my family's feelings or other victims' feelings. They think that because we're now in a peace process where everybody's too scared to say anything in case they're accused of rocking the boat, that it's okay to do whatever they like. And it's all right, it's justified because you've done good work for the last 14 years. Oh, Jesus Christ. Sorry, but you know.
Anne, you're absolutely okay. I hope you realise how many people are contacting us agreeing with every word you're saying. I'm not going to suggest that everyone is agreeing with every word you're saying simply because we live in Northern Ireland, and you will understand that.
No,
but the number of people who are supporting you here on the texts and emails, I simply can't keep track or keep count. I so appreciate your contribution this morning, and I think most people listening to the show will understand how difficult today is now that the person who murdered your sister has spoken out. I thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Frank. But actually, can I just say one last thing? I know that there are people who don't agree with me. You know, I have read numerous blogs and internet things and newspapers, and I've listened to reports, and I respect their feelings. I respect it. I respect Mary McArdle's right to work, and I respect the fact that she has done work for Sinn Féin within her own community. I'm just asking her to respect us and to respect our feelings and respect my rights as a sister of Mary Travers.
Anne, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It is Ann Travers there, the sister of the late Mary Travers and daughter of the former magistrate Tom Travers.